So I've been doing a lot of thinking recently, and I'll be the first to admit that I tend to be a bit of a ruminator and an overthinker, but I've been doing a lot of reflecting back to my childhood and my upbringing and the various decisions that I've made over the entire scope of my life that have led me to being where I am today in every aspect. As somebody who tends to be a bit pessimistic, or as I prefer to call it, realistic, I do have a tendency to be quite hard on myself about things and to look back on things with a lot of criticism, but there are a few decisions that I've realized that I made early on in life that have actually set me up in a really positive way to be where I am today. The most bizarre part of it all is that the decisions that I put a lot of thought into, the things that I stressed over, are not decisions that I can even think about today, but the things that I kind of did haphazardly at the time, the things that I did impulsively, are some of the things that have actually set me up to be in the best possible position that I can be in now at 28 years old. It's kind of funny how that works, right? That the more we stress about things, the more we overthink things, the less significant they tend to be. But the decisions that we just don't even really put that much consideration into can be some of the biggest ones we ever make. I am absolutely not a millionaire. I make a very modest income. I live a very simple life. And by nobody's standards, at least in the Western world, could I be considered anywhere near wealthy. But I do live a stable life and a comfortable life. And it's so much more than I ever thought that I would ever have, coming from the background that I came from and coming from the financial scarcity that I grew up in. And so in this video, I want to go over the top 5 financial decisions that I made when I was in my late teens and early 20s that helped to set me up to be where I am today. So let's start with decision number 5. The very first thing I did as soon as I turned 18 was I applied for a credit card. And I know that if Dave Ramsey and his clan are watching this, their heads are going to explode.
That's stupid.
But having a credit card is so important because it is the very first thing that you will start to use to develop your credit and to build up your credit score, which is really important in today's world. I'm going to cover up all the details, but this right here is the first credit card that I ever opened when I was 18. I still have it today. It's still active and I still use it. It's a free card. There's no annual fee. You get cash back when you make purchases with it, but most importantly is that I have never paid a single penny of interest on it. I use this card the same way you'd use a debit card. I put my day-to-day expenses on it, my groceries, all the normal things that I need in life, and I pay off the balance in full at the end of every single month, no questions asked. If you can stay disciplined and use the card just like that, making sure not to spend frivolously on it, not to buy things you don't need, not to buy things you can't afford, not to buy things with the intention of paying them off little bit by little bit, but rather just using it as a day-to-day charge card and then paying it off in full at the end of every month, you will build up a tremendous credit score in no time. Additionally, I think having a credit card is a great way to practice self-control and discipline, knowing that just because you have access to thousands of dollars worth of credit doesn't mean that you should use it. So just by using this card for regular purchases I was going to make anyways and paying it off in full at the end of every single month, I was able to set myself up with a nearly perfect credit score, which helped me out so much when I was ready to get a mortgage. Decision number 4 is one of the most important ones I made and honestly one of the most difficult ones I made, and that was to stay living at home. And I fully realized that that's not an opportunity that everybody has. It's not something everyone can do. But if you have the chance to stay living with your family for a while, either for free or even just for a few $100s a month just to help out with bills or a little bit of rent, whatever it is, I would highly recommend doing so. Housing nowadays is so outrageously expensive, and spending thousands of dollars a month on rent when you're young is only setting you up for debt in the future. If staying with your family isn't an option, I would highly recommend finding either the cheapest apartment possible or even just finding a few roommates that you can split rent with. But by keeping your living expenses as low as possible, it will give you the opportunity to save yourself a nice little nest egg, which you can then use for the down payment of a home, or you can use it to put yourself through college without debt or whatever else you need. I made a video just last week, which I'll link to up here. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out. It's all about how I managed to save $100,000 by the time that I was 25 years old while only earning about minimum wage. And spoiler alert, living at home was a big part of that. Decision number 3 was rooted in pure stubbornness and laziness, but it was committing myself to working smarter, not harder. In high school, I saw all my friends getting minimum wage jobs at fast food restaurants and grocery stores, and I was just not having it. I decided there was no way I was going to do that, and instead I was going to try and find some skill set that I had that I could market myself with that would earn me a much better wage. In my case, I was playing guitar, and I decided that I was going to give guitar lessons to little kids in the neighborhoods. But while all of my friends were working for like $9 an hour doing back-breaking manual labor, I was able to get myself into a position where I could charge $30 an hour for a job that, in my opinion, was way easier and way more fun. You may not play guitar, but I fully believe that everybody has a skill that they can market themselves with, something that can earn them a really solid hourly wage. And while you're young and your expenses are low and you're still in school, is the perfect time to experiment with those things. You may even still decide you want to get a regular part-time job like everybody else, and that's totally cool, but even having this skill set as something you can do for additional money on the side will really help you to understand the potential of what your time can actually be worth. Maybe you can fix computers or tutor kids in math or cut lawns or shovel snow, something that will allow you to earn $20 or $30 or $40 or even $50 an hour as opposed to the $10 or $15 an hour you're making working for someone else. Oh my gosh. By the way, if you prefer this style of video where I'm moving around as opposed to just sitting in one spot, go ahead and leave me a comment down below and let me know. It's something that I'm kind of experimenting with. It's a little bit different. Hit the like button, by the way. Also, if you haven't done that, thank you very much. Decision number 2 is something that I'm a huge believer in and something that I still practice today, and that was the decision to start tracking my spending. Tracking your spending is so important when it comes to taking control of your finances. If you don't know where your money is going, it's so easy to just spend it like water. You might be able to keep track mentally of the big purchases, but it's these small things that are seemingly inconsequential that actually make the biggest impact. It's the grabbing a coffee here, the going out for lunch there. I'm not even telling you not to do those things, but just to keep track of them, to realize how much money you're spending on those types of things on a monthly basis and decide for yourself if it's worth it to you. Just be a little bit more intentional with it. Nowadays, I use a spending tracker app on my iPhone, which I've mentioned in many videos. Again, I'll link to it in the description box below. It's a free app. It's super easy. In the past, I used an Excel sheet. I used a notepad. It doesn't really matter. Just find a way to track your spending and do it religiously. All right, for this final decision, for decision number 1 that I made, I actually need to come over to the couch because this is a big one and it's going to be a really controversial one, but bear with me here. The number 1 decision I made when I was young that I feel made the biggest impact on my financial life overall was the decision not to go to university or college. I'll give you a second to process that one because I think I just rattled some cages. When I was graduating high school, post-secondary education was framed as like the default option. It wasn't a matter of whether or not you were going to go, it was where you were going to go and what you were going to take, as though it was just something that was assumed that everybody was going to do, except for those few people who were flunkies or druggies or dropouts or losers. And then there was me. I wasn't bad at school, I didn't get bad marks, I wasn't a drug user, none of those things applied to me. I was just like, I don't want to do that. Like, I had enough of school, I'm over it, and I don't believe that college or university is the be-all and end-all. And teachers were shocked, and guidance counselors were shocked. Like, they didn't expect that to come from me. And full disclosure, a lot of that came from immaturity. A lot of that came from me, again, being stubborn and being like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to go play music and I want to go live my life, and university doesn't fit into that equation for me. University was framed as the non-risky option. It was what you did if you wanted to be successful. You'd go get a degree and then you'd get a job with that degree that makes you a whole bunch of money and so on and so forth. And I just don't buy into that at all. Again, I didn't even think it through to this degree when I was younger. I didn't see it the way that I see it right now. I accepted the fact that I was possibly screwing up my whole life by deciding to just be like, nah, I don't want to do that. But I think that retrospectively now, 10 years later, 10 plus years later, I think I made the best decision for myself, and I think that more people would have been better off if they made the same decision that I made. I don't think that going to university is the non-risky option. In fact, I think it's extremely risky. We're fear-mongered into believing that without a degree that the best you'll ever do is work at McDonald's, and that's so untrue. I think that going to university is a tremendously risky decision. You're 17 or 18 years old and you're taking out a loan of 5 or 6 figures to put yourself into a schooling program which you may or may not successfully complete, which you may or may not enjoy. You might decide you hate it and you don't want to be there anymore. You might drop out, you might switch. You're spending money, you're bleeding money without any reassurance that you're going to be able to make that money back and pay it off. And I know people who are in their 40s and 50s today who still have student loan debt. I can't even tell you how many of my friends and my peers have degrees that they're just simply not using, that they either couldn't find work in their field, or they decided that they hate that field and they switched to something else, or they're in a job that doesn't require a degree at all, or they're unemployed. Having a degree is not a guarantee of having success financially or otherwise in life. There are absolutely some jobs which require it. If you're going to be a doctor, or you're going to be a veterinarian, or you're going to be a lawyer or an engineer, make sure that when you graduate, you're actually going to be able to find a job which will pay you a high enough income to warrant the debt you're putting yourself into, that you're going to be able to pay it off in a few years when you're done. If you want to go into business or the arts or any of the trades, or maybe you're 18 years old or 19 years old and you simply just don't know what you want to do, don't feel like you need to go to university or college and just pick something, because you absolutely do not. In fact, I think that just taking random post-secondary classes when you have no idea what you want to do is probably one of the worst financial decisions you can ever make. And so if you want to do something that requires a degree and you're committed to it and you're happy to do it and you know that that's what you want to do for the rest of your life and you're going to be able to find a job in that position, you should do it. But if that doesn't apply to you, then don't. Over the 4 years that my friends were digging themselves deeper and deeper in debt for a degree that they didn't even really need, I was able to work and to earn experience and to save money. And so by the time that I was 22, while most people had a negative net worth, I had 5 figures in the bank that eventually became 6 and eventually became a house. I'm not saying you should go to university. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to university. I'm saying that you should do what's right for you. And don't let anybody pressure you into something being the be-all and end-all, because there is no one-size-fits-all for life. Anyways, that's all I have. I will get off my soapbox now. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit the like button. I really appreciate every like that I get. It helps me out tremendously, helps the algorithm to push this video to other people. If you haven't already done so, hit subscribe. I would really appreciate that as well. Drop me a comment down below and let me know if you're in your teens or you're in your 20s right now, what some of the things are that you've started to implement to try to set yourself up for success later on. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video.